Welcome to the I Am HVAC Growth Podcast, where we interview the top leaders in the HVAC industry across North America to understand how they grew their businesses to where they are today. I'm your host, Rob Murray, co-founder and CEO of Intri, a digital marketing agency focused on helping HVAC companies grow. All right, welcome to another episode of the I Am HVAC Growth Podcast. Today, I have the pleasure of having Michael Grochmal on the podcast today. So thanks a lot for doing this, Michael.
Hey, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. Really excited. We had a chance to talk a little bit about the topics we're going to be going on today. I mean, the whole purpose of this podcast is to help people and the leaders and entrepreneurs in the HVAC industry kind of blast through the growth constraints that they're kind of facing on a day-to-day basis. And whether it's sales or staff or even just the leadership mindset, I'm really excited about today's episode because I feel like we're going to be kind of touching on all three of those aspects. When we had the conversation before, there aren't a lot of entrepreneurs that I've had a chance to meet that have a really cool focus the way you do when it comes to, the foundational aspects of strategic planning and people. So I'm really stoked to get into it. So just for the crowd, can you just give a quick kind of synopsis of kind of where you've come from, where you are today, and what the core focus of Atlas Care is?
Yeah, so I joined Atlas Care in 2003. I did grow up in the business, and after university, I had a career in sales at Xerox. And then I came back in 2003 and I've been here ever since. And, when I joined Atlas Care, we were probably about, $5 million business. And, now we're, getting, sort of in that $18 million range. So over the kind of the last 17 years, and it's just been a process of building.
Awesome. And so before I get into the title that I saw on your LinkedIn profile of Chief Culture Ambassador, you mentioned that you went and had a sales career at Xerox. I've heard the sales training there is pretty awesome. So was there any kind of cool nuggets that you've had a chance to bring it over into Atlas Care from that experience?
Well, absolutely. I mean, there's a joke that Xerox trained the world's sales force. And, I think what I really took out of that experience was just being around, hundreds of real sales professionals, understanding activity management, understanding pipeline, understanding that you have to always be looking for business, and it was great, and it was also quite competitive. You get a bunch of A-type personality salespeople together, and it's competitive. And so the idea of running contests and being competitive with each other in fun spirit, I think I was able to bring some of that over to the business, and as well as really understanding how to differentiate ourselves. Again, take a photocopier. They all kind of look the same and they all kind of do the same thing. So the question now is, well, how do you differentiate and charge a premium? And so I brought that mindset into the company.
Awesome. That's a really great place to start. So you came in at 5 million. Right now you're about an $18 million company. That's massive growth. This idea of differentiation, how did you decide, okay, well, we need to differentiate. What does that look like? And then what do you do?
Yeah, so it started with me in the sense that I'm not sure I enjoyed coming to work when I first came over. I came over because my dad needed a hand and my mom was sick, and so that's why I came. It was never in my plans, though, as most people would tell you. Nobody plans to be in the HVAC world, and so I was no different. I didn't grow up wanting to be an HVAC guy, and so I got in, and I didn't really enjoy the culture. I felt people were a little crabby. I felt like they didn't care as much as I did. And so that bothered me when people didn't care about the customers as much as I did. And so I started researching, like, well, can I change this? Like, a lot of these people have been here for a long time and, what do I do? But I didn't enjoy coming to work every day. So that was really the impetus for starting the journey on the idea of culture.
Yeah, so that's something I hear a lot. We've had these folks here for a long time. We know they don't necessarily, live every day by our core values of client first or whatever it might be. So yeah, like just breaking into that idea for a quick second, how do you start moving the crotchety, grumpy 25-year technician into a culture of, someone who cares about the customer first?
Yeah, I mean, at first you start talking to people, and I think the other part is you involve them. And so we got all kinds of people together. And we talked about, actually started off with an audit. And so we had a third-party company come in and they asked all our employees, like, what do you think makes Atlas Care great? And then they asked our suppliers, do you like doing business with them when we think of their name? Like, what comes to mind? And then we do the same with customers. And so you had this sort of, you had to look at it from three different stakeholders' perspective. And when we were good, the same terms were coming up. They're nice, they're friendly, and so you start sharing that data and information with your staff. And it's like, here's what people like about us. So when we're good, here's what they like. We also did a bit of an audit to find out, well, what don't you like? And if it's like arrogant or smug or didn't care, so now you've got these two buckets of sort of words where it's like, when people love us, this is what they love about us. And when they don't love us, this is what they really don't like about us. So now you say, okay, like, so who do we want to be? And what do we want to be remembered for? And so that was sort of the starting point of the process. And then, I made the comment when we were off air that we created this brand foundation. And the brand foundation becomes, this is who we are and what we stand for. And so the challenge when you do that, though, is that there's people that are currently with your organization that aren't going to agree with it. But they'll self-select. And so I would tell people that you should expect 25 to 30% turnover when you start this process.
Yeah. So that's something that seems really, reasonable from my perspective, but in an environment where a lot of people are struggling to find, skilled talent or anybody to come help their jobs. Like, 8 years ago, the biggest issue we hear from entrepreneurs was sales. In the last 2, more so, probably a bit longer, but the last 2 for sure, prior to COVID, was finding people. And so when you're offering up this idea that there might be 25 to 30% turnover, that might scare some folks. So how do you handle that when it comes to, being in such a tight labor market?
Well, I think the question comes, every entrepreneur has to look in the mirror and say, why does anybody work for me? Like, why are they choosing me? It's no different than customers, and it's like, why do they choose you versus somebody else? And so you have to actually work actively, I think, on your hiring brand. And so over time, what ends up happening is people actually hear about you and want to come work for you. And so although you might be losing existing people, the question now is, do you just have a job that you're offering somebody? And so if somebody has another job, then I guess, all your people are always in play. But really my goal has always been, I want us to be so good that everybody in the industry wants to hire my people away.
Yeah.
And I want people who are hireable. I don't think I want staff that nobody else wants to hire. I want staff that everybody wants to hire. That's the idea.
Yeah, that's cool. We have this idea we always say around here. It's A players are on the ice. It's when you're looking for people, then you're pulling out of the unemployed pool. Well, there might be a reason that that's the case. I just love what you're saying though about, a hiring brand. It's not a lot of entrepreneurs are thinking that way. And we have a kind of a service that we do with our clients is called the employer of choice. And it's really about that idea about creating a brand for essentially 24/7, 365 recruiting. So I just think that's spot on. So when it comes to, go ahead.
Oh, sorry to interrupt. You mentioned recruiting. I think it all goes hand in hand with this. As I tell our people all the time, and I like to relate it to sports. I think people can relate to sports pretty good. Especially college sports, they don't start recruiting. They don't. I was a basketball player. They don't recruit a point guard when they need one.
Right.
Like they're always recruiting point guards. They're always recruiting people. And there's people in the pipeline at different stages. And so I'm like, we're always hiring. They're like, well, we don't have a job opening today. We don't have one today, you're right. But we might have one tomorrow. And we might have one in 3 months. And so we want to be talking to as many people as possible. There's people that we might say, hey, I really enjoyed meeting you. We don't have a role for you, but would you be okay when we get a role that I would reach back out to you? And so it's like constantly recruiting. It's a never ending. And so I will take an interview with anybody at any time. And even if we don't do business today, we might in the future, or they might know somebody, or we're on the radar screen. They tell a friend when we have an opening, that's maybe a different type of job. Hey, you should look at this company. But it's getting it out there, but it's constantly recruiting, not just when you have a need. Yeah,
that's cool. Well, on that exact idea, so we we encourage a lot of our clients to post jobs for almost every position inside their company, and on their job or career page, mention that not all spots are available, but feel free to apply. And the whole idea is we're trying to get folks to start building a contact database, an email list, so that when something does come up, they can go direct to the source instead of through an Indeed or a LinkedIn or a recruiter or whatever. So I think that's awesome. What was that classic thing, but always be closing, always be recruiting, right? And there's always a spot for an A player, right? Like A players are free. If they're amazing people, we can find a spot for them. I just think that you're spot on with that approach. So then on that note then, and you talked about this idea of the brand foundation and there's going to be turnover, but you have to build this hiring brand. What kind of things have you done at Atlas Care to build that hiring brand?
Yeah, so we've forged relationships with a lot of the trade schools, and so the people at the trade schools know us. So we're a known entity to most of them, and we have a long history of bringing up apprentices. So there's lots of guys that have been with us 15 to 20 years that started with us right out of school, and they're still with us today. And so it's really mentoring those kids through the process and helping them build a career for themselves. And as you have testimonials of people that you've helped them build their career, that word gets out.
Yeah.
And so, and again, we're always interviewing. So we run a job fair, once or twice every year, reach out to all the trade schools, and, we're just talking to as many people as possible in the industry. And so we want people to know, like, we take care of our people. We talk about our culture a lot and say it's not for everybody, but for people who it is for, they feel like they've finally found their home because of the things that we value.
Okay, that's cool. Like, I love that. There's a piece around, we call it like kind of the Fight Club approach. Like, this isn't for everybody. And oftentimes we're seeing job postings out there about like great benefits, flexible work hours, great pay. And it's just like, anybody can come here, as opposed to like, hey, like, we believe in leadership and lifelong learning. And if you don't agree with those things, you're probably going to hate working here. So don't bother. But if you do like those things, you're probably going to love it. So when it comes to the culture that you've created, what are some of the key points that really kind of stick out that are like the love-hate type of, indicators?
Sort of love-hate indicators, you mean? So
yeah, like if I'm somebody looking at Atlas Care and I'm like, oh, they've got that culture, I'm like, I love it, or no way am I going there because that's just not for me.
Yeah, okay. So a lot of people who become technicians they're not really big people, and we're all about people. And so we help each other. So again, if you don't have like a servant leadership mindset, you probably won't like working here because, if we need somebody to do something on a Friday night, it's not about like, well, because we told you have to work tonight, it's your job, only your job. There's a team of people that would stand up and say, if you needed a hand, I'll help out. And so so if you're not the kind of person who would ever put your hand up and say, I want to help out, over time, you'll feel a little bit ostracized from the group because
right.
The group will recognize that. As I always joke, it's like going for beers with your buddies. No one keeps tab as to who paid. Everybody knows when that guy never pays.
Right.
I don't have a ledger that says, hey, this guy never buys, but everybody knows.
Yeah.
And so it works the same. There's not a ledger of who helped out and who didn't help out. Everybody knows that guy over there never helps out.
Yeah.
And so again, I have my own brand as Mike Grochmal. I have my own brand as Atlas Care, but I remind all my employees, each of them have their own brand. And so what is their brand within the organization? Is their brand friendly? Is it helpful? Is it technical? Is it continuous learning? Like, what is their own personal brand? I think every employee needs to constantly remind themselves that you are what people think you are. And, because I love the line that I got from the first branding guys I ever learned from. They always said, brand is not a logo, it's what people think of you. So as an individual, you may not have a logo. People think something about you. So when someone says your name, something's going to come to mind.
Yeah.
And so what is that comes to mind, and what do you want it to be? And are you working towards making it what you want it to be?
Yeah, is it intentional?
Yeah.
The idea that perception is reality, regardless of what you think about yourself. What other people think about you, especially in a team setting, is the reality that you're living in. I think that's awesome. And so, this idea of helping out on the Friday night, I mean, that seems like it's pretty baked into everything that you're doing. We were talking about kind of the purpose of Atlas Care, and you're saying, we're always there when you need us. I think it was kind of the idea.
There you go. Yeah, absolutely.
So, that, and from our perspective, like at Intrigue, our purpose is empowering leaders to strengthen communities. It's ingrained kind of in everything that we do. So it seems really kind of fundamental, like it's like the building blocks, everything else kind of gets built on top of. So what was that process like for you in terms of trying to figure out, what a purpose statement looks like and how to make sure it wasn't just a writing on the wall and a sign in a boardroom, and it was actually something that could be lived out every day?
Yeah. And so again, I reached out to outside people to help me with this. So none of this is coming from my own ideas. I mean, these are people that I've worked with that have sort of brought this to the table. And we talked a lot about involving lots of people, which is why we looked at lots of stakeholders, from employees, customers, suppliers, and because if it comes from that, it's not aspirational. It's actually who we are when we're at our best. So then the question is now around focus around being our best all the time, but it's not aspirational. Where a lot of times I find people put statements together that are very aspirational. We're going to be the best in this. Are you ever the best? Well, no, but we were going to be the best. It's like, well, okay, but you're not, and so trying to be something you're not is actually really hard to do.
Yeah.
And I think that what's easier is to be true to yourself and be who you are, who you can be, who you can be. And then it's more around focusing on doing it every minute of every day. And so a lot of times I think it comes down to consistency. It's the same reason why they usually say that McDonald's has the best hamburgers. Because there's 10,000 McDonald's out there, and no matter which one you go to, it tastes exactly the same.
Yeah.
I mean, I've done this with employees before. I one time got cheeseburgers for all our staff, and I went through 6 different McDonald's, and I was like, hey, who got the ones from this store? Like, who got the ones? Like, nobody knows.
Yeah.
But that's the point. And so for our service, it can't be that one customer had a great experience and they refer us to their neighbor, and their neighbor has a bad experience. That doesn't work very well. Like, you want everybody to have that same experience. A little bit like Disney, where they talk about every time a guest comes, it could be their first or only time, or this could have been their 1,000th time, but we don't know.
Right.
We're going to treat everybody like it was their first time.
That's
so everyone gets the best experience possible.
And it's consistent.
Yeah.
So then people know what to expect, and then when they know what to expect, they can enjoy the experience.
Yeah. Well, a lot of times happiness is related to expectations. And just in life.
I was going to say that applies in a lot of spots.
Yeah. And so, if it's when expectations aren't met that people are unhappy.
Yeah.
And so you want to, put out an expectation that, you can live up to.
Yeah, it's awesome. I mean, the idea of being what you are, not what you think you should be. I think that's a big thing. And I think, the idea of bringing outside help in and the idea of talking to and involving all stakeholders, to really identify what you really are, as opposed to what you think you should be, as opposed to, 5 or 6 people in a boardroom trying to come up with some purpose statement. I just think that's got a lot of merit to it. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
So then when you go from there, and then you talked about your brand foundation. So can you just give people kind of a quick synopsis of what that brand foundation is and kind of how it works?
Yeah. And so, you take, I think a lot of the framework is familiar to people. A lot of it comes down to how you use it, which is a bit of the difference. So you get your mission and your purpose, and the purpose, and mission. Those can really belong to the owner. Then you've got your values. What are the collective values of sort of our tribe? There's that book, Tribal Leadership, talks about it. We're a tribe, right? So it's like, what are our common values? And then more importantly, so you put it on the wall, but you have to talk about it all the time. So every time I get a group of employees together, I talk about 1 or 2 of the values, whether it's a town hall, whether it's a small meeting. Reinforce. And then every time you need to sit down and either discipline somebody or talk, you need to frame it with the language of the brand foundation. So whenever there's conflict in the business, it's usually because something on the brand foundation was violated.
Yeah.
And so you have to learn how to coach in that manner. And so if it's like, well, Bob doesn't care, it's like, okay, well, what doesn't Bob care about? And then it's like, oh, well, we did training and he didn't show up, or he didn't. Oh, okay. So then when you sit down with Bob, it's not that, well, you don't care, Bob. It's, hey, Bob, per our brand foundation, one of our values is continuous learning. And so can you explain to us how you demonstrated that to the team lead last training session? It's more effective. It starts to weave into everything that you do, and it has to weave into the language.
It's the way to go. There's no doubt. And I think it's not that difficult, but it's tough at the beginning, I think, for a lot of folks. And then once you get practice, it becomes kind of like a language, and you don't have to think about it anymore, just kind of how you do things. And you're just, you're speaking to my heart, because whenever I hear conflict in our organization, like one of the values we have is leadership, do what you say you're going to do when you say you're going to do it. And so someone's like, this person isn't trustworthy, or they're not integral. Like, well, what do you mean? I don't understand what's going on. They're like, well, they didn't get this thing done when they said they would. Okay, well, that's a core value here. That's really important. And if it's patterned, then, hey, we got to talk about why we're creating expectations that aren't being met, and do it through the language of core values. And I just think it's awesome.
And the other part is that I think you have to weave it into all your behaviors as well. And so, that's one group of behaviors, which is if you have to deal with conflict. But I mean, there's other things, it's one of those, do meetings at your place start on time or not? And if they don't start on time, is everyone okay with it? But I mean, I think the one thing for all entrepreneurs to know is that your business has a culture. So why don't you make it intentional? Because you have one anyway. And so at some places I've been to, like on time for a meeting means 5 minutes early. Sometimes on time for a meeting means on time. And sometimes on time for a meeting means within the first 15 minutes of when it's supposed to start. And that's cultural. And so like that feeds its way through the organization. And so there's lots of those behavioral type things that show up in all kinds of ways. And so you have to figure out what are the really important ones, and then what are the ones that we're going to live by every day.
Yeah, I love it. We have, one of the things, I don't know, it was a blessing, I guess, maybe a curse, but reading Good to Great by Jim Collins, like a decade ago, he kept referring to this idea of like creating mechanisms within an organization to put teeth into whatever it is, whether it's core values, whether it's mission, whether it's vision. But like, how do you bring it to life every day so that it's actually observable as opposed to just, talked about? And so one of the thoughts we had, and we've shared this with a lot of our customers, and they're starting to implement it, maybe not as consistently as us, but they're doing it, is these awesome citations. I'm not sure, have you ever heard of the Gallup poll? It's like the 12 questions that you ask essentially your team to figure out the organizational health of the company. And it's like, I have the tools to do my job well. I know what's expected of me at work. I have a good friend at work. Anyway, there's 12 questions. And like across the globe with this survey, the one that scored the lowest, essentially in every instance, was I've received praise in the last 7 days for doing a good job. And we did the survey, and then we're like, oh man, we scored low on that one. And we're like, okay, well, we obviously need to step up our game. So we started going out of our way, and we would have a weekly, ownership meeting, and then we'd say, okay, let's go recognize some folks. And then we did the survey again like 6 months later, and it barely moved the needle. So we're like, what's going on? So we came up with these things called awesome citations. I don't know, you can get them on Amazon or whatever, and we just write them out and just say, to whoever it is, and demonstrating this core value, doing this thing, and we gave them to people. And then it was unbelievable. They started giving them to each other. Everybody started keeping them and collecting them. And it was just great to see how well it worked. And I just think it's, to your point, it has to be weaved into these behaviors all over the place. I just think that's awesome.
Well, and the other thing is that people, I'm always amazed at how many people will treat their customers great. And yet for an entrepreneur, my customers are actually my employees. And so people will go to the ends of the earth for a paying customer, but they wouldn't go to the ends of the earth for their own staff. And so I think that's a huge disconnect that a lot of companies have, because, I mean, this is all old adage, right? Like, treat your people well, and your people will treat your customers well.
Yeah.
And have employees, like do better work. But it's also observable by customers. They can tell when an employee's happy. And so when a happy employee shows up at your house, there's already the benefit of the doubt they're going to do good work for me. If an unhappy person shows up, I'm kind of looking out to see what they're doing, And so
I got some expensive stuff in my basement. I'm going to go watch this person do some work because I don't really know what's up.
Yeah. And so, I think that there is economic benefit to all this stuff. And I'm not sure everybody sees it that way. And so they unfortunately don't take care of staff as well as they should. And again, that gets weaved into your hiring brand. So, it all comes full circle, right? Because if you have unhappy staff, one of the things I love to do when I'm interviewing is actually leave somebody in our front lobby for 5 or 10 minutes just to observe the interaction with our staff and to listen to our staff on the phones. And then one of my first questions is always like, what'd you think? And it's not for everybody.
Yeah, it's cool.
So.
You reminded me, we used to put a newspaper out front of our door when a person was coming in for an interview just to see if they bring it in with them. And taking initiative is really important for us. Anyway, that just reminded me of that. That's cool. And it's like an organic practice, right? Like the interview setting itself is really awkward and kind of, just not, it's an artificial setting, for two humans.
Well, yeah. And that's the other part. I've worked a lot on, how do you do an effective interview? Taking courses and all kinds of stuff. And so, a couple of things that just tips that I always bring to mind is, I try to make it as natural as possible. I really want to get people just talking. I feel like so many people have all these structured interviews and to your point, it just feels unnatural. As opposed to let's just start talking. One of my favorite interview questions I always ask people is, if I kicked you out of the room and invited your 3 best friends in here, how would they describe you to me?
Yeah.
And so they start thinking about their best friends though. And they'll start laughing and going, oh, that guy would say this, but don't listen to that guy, he's a liar. And you start to see people's natural personality kind of come out, which is what I want, as opposed to, tell me a time where you had an issue here and how you dealt with it and what was the outcome.
Yeah.
It's like, and everyone's got these all prepared, and you want to ask questions they can't be prepared for. No one's prepared to figure out what their 3 best friends, how they would describe them. They've never been asked that. They don't even know how to prepare for it. And so it's interesting to see. And then it's also interesting to see people's responses. Some people are like, well, what does that have to do with anything?
Like, okay.
Yeah, I don't think you're going to work out here, but hey, we'll give you the time, So, like, organically, people will self-select as you go through the process. I've wait out for 10 minutes because I want them to experience our culture, and they get in, they're annoyed that I made them wait 10 minutes.
Right.
And it's almost like you didn't get the lesson.
Yeah, that was easy.
And so, like, that happens.
Yeah, it's cool.
You have to be picky, too, because, everyone you bring into the organization, it's also being upfront, I think, with people when you hire them. Like, I'll hire people and say, listen, here's how I expect you to act. You are going to see people working here that don't act this way. That's my problem. You're expected to act this way. We're moving towards everyone being like this.
Yeah.
Just because you see somebody acting this way doesn't give you the right to act that way, because you've been told explicitly. Some people have been with us 15, 20 years, and we're working with them to get them over there. But you, on day one, you knew what you were signing up for. A lot of them, they signed up before me. So, like, all the expectations that have changed and been set over the time, these are all new to them, and they're new behaviors and things they have to learn. Whereas other people I'm hiring today, day one, I told you, this is how I expect you to act.
That's cool.
Even if you see somebody else, don't act that way.
It's, there's so much simplicity to that and beauty to it because, everybody doesn't necessarily, march into the same beat right away, especially if there's a lot of change. I love what you just said there too, but these are new behaviors. They're learning. We're working with them to get over here. But the idea of setting the expectation that, like, not everybody here acts this way. But that doesn't mean it gives you the opportunity to do so, because the expectations are super clear that this is the way we act as a group, and we all need to start doing this so we can all get there.
Well, I also think that the honesty part, again, trust is, like a lot of companies, it's in our brand foundation, and we used to be the most trusted and all the rest. And so it's hard to own trust, which is why we kind of moved away from it. But the idea that, well, how do you build trust? You tell the truth. Interviews are a big fake where everyone's got their best foot forward. And I want to tell them, usually in an interview, I'll tell them all the things that stink about Atlas Care that we're working on. And I don't want them to go, oh, well, I thought it was great, but then I came here and this guy wasn't paying attention. This guy was whatever. And hey, I told you all that stuff. And so again, I'm always telling employees potential employees, you're interviewing me as much as I'm interviewing you. And, I need to fill a job and you need a job, but this isn't going to work out if you don't really want this and I don't really want this. And so there's no point in us lying to each other. Let's be as open and honest as possible. So I tell people, here's the warts of Atlas Care that we're working on, but they're still there and you're going to experience them and you're going to be affected by them. And I just need you to know that we're aware of them. We're working on them, but that doesn't mean I can solve it overnight.
Yeah, that's brilliant though, man. Like I talk to a lot of folks about the same thing, not about the warts though. And that's something, that's a takeaway I'm going to take from this and implement. There's also something you've been implying this whole time, which I'm going to get to in a quick second. But the idea of just being like, hey, like we're not here to put rose-colored glasses on and paint blue sky pictures to see if we can like create some sort of fraudulent match. Because if we do that in 3 to 6 months from now, we're going to be doing it again with somebody else. And that sucks for everybody. So why don't we just, be real and figure out if this is a good fit for you. And I'm going to do my best today to give you as much info as I can, ask you as many questions as I can to figure out if that's going to be a good fit. And I want you to be able to do the same thing. So that authenticity and honesty, I think is just a really cool approach. But I've never talked to anybody that says, let me tell you about, some of the warts we have here that we're working on so that if you do decide to come on board, you're not going to be thinking that everything is just perfect. That's awesome. So,
well, and I'll use that again, we can get off the interview, but again, in interviews where I'm talking people and I'll say, I used to always ask the question, weakness or what are you working on? And people like to say like, I work too hard.
Oh yeah.
So I'll usually give them, here's all the issues I have. So I'm not as organized as I want to be, and I'm not this, and I'm not this, and I'm not, and I just give them like a laundry list. And I'll look at them and I go, and you work too hard? And then they'll start opening up and saying, okay, well, actually, I need to work, and they'll give you a whole bunch of things.
And they get honest.
And it starts to get honest, right? Because not everybody likes to work with me, not everybody likes to work for me.
Yeah.
And that's just true, and I know that. And so, but I know what people like, but I also know what they don't like about me. So I try to get that out on the table, especially if anyone's going to report directly to me.
That's cool.
Because I know what kind of leader I am, and I also know who I'm not. And so if this is the type of leader they want, if that's not me, I need to be very upfront and tell them I'm just not that person. So if that's what you need, you're not going to enjoy it here.
And then it just gets real. So that's beautiful. So then, okay, you've been implying that you do a lot of interviews.
I do every interview.
There it is. So can you just tell us a little bit about why that's the case and what's that about?
Yeah. And so I do a culture interview with every potential employee. And I miss the odd one if I'm away or, some other reason, or it's a really entry level type position, but pretty much every other position. I try to get in on every interview, and it's a good interview. Like it's 45 minutes to an hour, and it's all cultural based. I always tell people, I have no idea if they can do the job you need, but I can tell you they're the kind of person who can work here. And so it's always interesting because I'm not ever digging into anyone's work history. I'm never digging into their educational background. I just want to know what kind of person is sitting in front of me.
That's cool.
I'm on interview, and people always ask me, how do you have time for that? I'm like, you make time. It's important because a bad hire is so time consuming. From HR to sit-down meetings, lost productivity, financial issues on severance, like a
culture toxicity.
Yeah, it's and I've made lots of mistakes along the way.
Yeah, that's cool. And but the idea of being in every single one, that's going to sharpen your blade pretty quick too, right? Like having that kind of practice and seeing that many folks, you're going to be able to kind of pick up on a lot of patterns that a lot of people won't necessarily have the opportunity to see because they haven't been in the situation as much. So where in the process would you do that?
It can be first or last or in the middle. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. Okay.
And so it's harder if I do it at the end because if they're all hot to trot to hire this person and I say no, that's a tough spot to be in. It's easier up front if I do it and say, not. At the end, it can be tough, but it'll be where it'll be.
That's cool. So can you tell us a little bit more about the differentiation the path that you went down to differentiate Atlas Care, and then how you actually brought it to life?
Yeah, and so, when it came down to differentiating, the industry I just feel is not full of people. There'd be more than a few people I've met that would say this job would be great if it weren't for the customers. They really like to work on equipment, and they don't really have a servant leadership and servant mindset. And so that's really how I've tried to differentiate Atlas Care throughout the entire organization, up and down. That we care about you, we care about the internal customers, we care about the external customers. We do everything we can to take care of both. And we didn't say it wasn't going to be hard work, but we're just going to dive into it and honestly try to do the best we can every day. And so that has been, where I've really looked to differentiate and then demonstrate that to customers. And I think over time, customers have recognized they actually walk the talk. And it's not to say, though, that we don't make mistakes. I tell people all the time,
Sure.
We're not run by computers. And so until robots and computers do all the jobs, we're human beings, and human beings make mistakes. And so the measure of a company isn't whether you make mistakes, it's what you do when a mistake happens. And so we're here. I mean, if we make an error, we'll stand up for it. We'll say, yeah, we did. Man, that really takes the wind out of a customer's sails. Somebody's angry, wants to yell at you, I'm going to sue you, and you agree with them. You're like, yeah, we screwed up. But they just sort of stop yelling all of a sudden. They don't even know. They actually will keep yelling for a bit until they realize, you've agreed with them.
They got a little momentum going, right?
Well, yeah, and whenever I have to deal, unfortunately not that many, but when I have those situations, one of my favorite lines to tell a customer when they start yelling is, listen, at any point in time in this call, have I indicated I wasn't willing to help you? You can yell at me when I'm not willing to help you. Like, give me the opportunity to help you. Yeah. And that's all we want to do.
Yeah, when it's, one of the things we talk with our team here is just like, if we're really trying to do our best every day and we make a mistake, it's easy to hold your head up high and own it and then make it better. Yep. If you're trying to do half-ass stuff and you're trying to skirt the issue and you hope you don't get caught, well, then it's just like, yeah, that doesn't fly, and you don't want to own that because you knew you kind of did it and it's just kind of sleazy, and that doesn't work. And that's why, the idea of creating a culture where people can feel safe if they make a mistake, it's so important. And so one of the things we've found here, so one of our core values is action, embrace failure and learn from it. But when people come in for 6 to 12 months, it's really difficult for them to really kind of own that idea because they're just afraid of making a mistake. So what have you guys done at Atlas Care to create a culture of psychological safety if someone does, honestly mess up?
I think all this stuff starts at the beginning. And if you're consistent all the way through, over a period of time, you build that safety. I don't think there's any one thing that you can do to build psychological safety. I try to meet with people within the first 6 months to do, like a half day on kind of culture and talk about the idea that, if you're late for work, I'd rather you say you slept in than told us you got a flat tire. And by the way, if you're late for a customer, I'd rather you tell the customer you slept in than told them you got a flat tire. The truth is easy to remember. And so the problem with lies is that you got to remember your lies, and you got to remember who you told them to.
Is that Mark Twain?
Well, yeah, more than one person has told somebody, hey, I had a flat tire. And then they get there and they go, oh, how's your vehicle? Fine. Why are you asking? What? Because you told me you had a flat tire. Oh, yeah, I got it all fixed. Like, it just, people can see that. They can sense when you're lying to them. So just don't lie. Just tell the truth all the time. Almost to the point of brutal honesty.
Yeah. Well, it's like you never have to remember what you say if you never lie.
Yeah.
If you're always telling the truth. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, and so just brutal honesty, and it'll pay you off in time.
And then I guess from your perspective, doing that from day one, from the top down, from the bottom up, and then having the consistency of the experience over time, people get it. And that's what we've experienced here too. 6, 12 months into it, they're like, okay, yeah, it's real. The shoe isn't going to drop. This is actually the way we operate, which is cool. So then going back to the differentiator on people, which is like that kind of core focus. And then, as over time, your customers start to say, hey, these people actually walk the the walk. Like they're not just talking about it. What is it like in terms of positioning Atlas Care that way? And what have you done to actually market that idea?
Yeah, and so on the marketing side, a lot of it comes down to, getting great consumer reviews. People, they'll believe a review more than they're ever going to believe me. And so it's like, don't believe us. Why don't you listen to what customers are saying about us? I don't try to get rid of the bad reviews, actually. I know a lot of companies try to scrub bad reviews. Again, I think it makes us real. I don't care what the service is. Somebody had a lemon. Somebody
Sure.
had a bad experience. And sometimes way out of our control, right? We've had to cancel on people because, well, somebody called in sick. Well, I can't just make more openings.
Yeah.
Well, I had this booked a month ago. They're furious. And so every time I look at companies that have 0 bad reviews, I go, well, someone's scrubbing that.
Doesn't smell right.
It doesn't smell right. And so I think it makes us feel more real by having some of those real reviews, because we do screw up sometimes. And sometimes our fault, sometimes not our fault. But either way, mistakes happen. People get upset. And trying to hide that is disingenuous. And
Well, it goes against everything you were saying just before, right? Let's just be brutally honest and deal with it.
All the time. And so a lot of this has to be with consistency. You can't be brutally honest with customers, but not with your staff. Like that's an inconsistency. So people say, oh yeah, we're all about trust. And then their staff don't trust them. So like, okay, well, it's those inconsistencies, I think, that make a big difference. And then the other part is, how we sell it out there. I think I showed you, I make a culture book on the company. This is an 88-page book that talks about all the things of Atlas Care, why people work here and why they stay here, and how we build careers, and the fun that we have as a company, and awards for employees, and reviews from customers, and charity work, and it's all those things. And so this is really a little bit like Simon Sinek's Start With Why. This is our why. Like, why does Atlas Care deserve to exist? Because we're always there and people need us. And so if that resonates with somebody, well, then here's the services that we offer, and here's how we do those services better. But the question is, why should somebody do business with us? And so it's like, if you believe a company should be good to youth, if you believe they should be good payers, if you believe they should, a lot of it's sort of interesting. People always, they want companies to be this way, and then they want to buy stuff cheaper. Right? Well, they want you to pay your employees well, and give money to charity, and be a good corporate citizen, and like do all these things. And then they go, why'd you buy it there? Well, it's $3 cheaper. And it's like, well, all that stuff costs money. And so, unfortunately, it does. And so, you're trying to find the people that resonates with. That they're saying, yeah, you should pay people well. You should do things to make them happy. You should take care of them. You should invest in people's careers. You should do all those things. And yeah, that's the kind of company that has the right kind of social conscience that I want to be associated with and support. And so that's really kind of the plea that we're making out there to the consumers. You can always buy, so only one person can be the cheapest, and so you can always get it cheaper, but do you want it done right? Do you want to know it's being done by good people? Do you want to know that the jobs are local, and any profit that's made is staying local and being reinvested in the community? And so we're looking for customers that matters to. So the challenging part is that's not everybody.
Right.
So regularly you're told, oh, well, that's too expensive, or I don't, and they don't buy into it. And so that's actually one of the hardest things, is because I know we're not for everybody. But the ones we're for really like us.
Yeah, that's cool. And I mean, the idea too that, and this isn't true in every case, but if you're buying the cheapest, the odds of them being around in 10 years are pretty low. And the idea of having somebody there when you need them isn't really high. So paying a little bit extra to have a relationship of a company that's going to take care of your home or your office building or your industrial, whatever, it's pretty important as far as I'm concerned. So if you're paying an extra 5-10%, whatever it might be, it seems reasonable. But I mean, I think that's because I'm one of those customers. Not everybody is.
Well, and the other thing that I talk to people all about is that, because our industry has lots of long warranties on equipment.
Right.
But I remind people that warranty is not a guarantee of service. A warranty only identifies who pays for it. So like under a warranty agreement, nothing says I have to come out on Christmas Eve or Christmas Day or on the weekend or at night.
Yeah.
It just says that whenever somebody comes out and whenever it gets identified, you don't have to pay. And so the question, but most people don't think about it that way.
No.
Furnace or an air conditioner. But if you were to think about your dishwasher, if I call on Christmas Eve when my dishwasher's not working, nobody runs out in an hour and then runs around to get the part and fixes it so that with Christmas Day, I don't have to hand wash dishes.
Yeah.
But people are expecting that when it comes to a furnace and air conditioner, because they go, well, I have a warranty. The warranty only tells you who's going to pay for it.
Yeah, that's cool.
You know, the company has to deliver the warranty. And so that's what we deliver. And I think people take that for granted a lot of times, that they just say, well, it's under warranty. That's great. I've been like a month without a dryer before. I've been 3 weeks without a dishwasher. I've been 2 weeks.
You didn't have to pay for it, but you still didn't have it.
Yeah. And so at some point, as as people, hopefully do well in their careers and stuff, at some point, time becomes more valuable than money. And so the question, so again, from a positioning, I think I've tried to position Atlas Care where even if you could do it yourself, do you? I have no doubt I can answer the phones better than anyone I employ. But is that really the best use of my time to be answering those phones? But if I did, I wouldn't have to pay anybody else to do it. So I could save the money. And so it's not that different from your home. I can go change my own furnace filter. But do I really want to be going to Home Depot and remembering to do it and remembering to go downstairs? Like, I work hard. I work a lot of hours. I got 3 kids. When I'm home, I want to be with them.
Yeah.
I don't want to be going, oh, God, I got to change the furnace filter and running up to Home Depot and buying one. And no, I want to take them for a bike ride, or I want to go, do a puzzle with them, or like I want to do stuff with them, dance with my daughter, like that, and so, we provide that level of service for people to really help get them through. And so, and it shows up in lots of different ways. I always think stats are one of those things too. People go to, they'll say, well, I can buy a smart thermostat for less money, a Nest or an Ecobee from a big box store. I go, that's great. So you know how to install it? Oh, I can figure it out. Great. So you're away on business and now it dies. Can your wife take it off the wall? And so it's under warranty though. Don't worry. You just take it off the wall, go over to Best Buy, return it, get a new one and reinstall it.
No problem.
I cover all that by, hey, we'll send somebody out and do all that for you. And so some people, they say that makes sense. And other people say it doesn't make sense at all.
Right.
So I think the big part of a culture is that we talked about on the hiring side where it's not for everybody. Same for customers. One of the hardest things for entrepreneurs is to say no. And so, when you need business, you need business. You want to take it from anybody everywhere. You want to win, anybody who needs what you offer, you kind of want to win. And over time, I've had to learn we're not for everybody.
Yeah.
So just like I wouldn't hire anybody just because they have the requirements for the job, I wouldn't sell to everybody either.
Yeah, we call ABC clients. So A clients are awesome clients, love your stuff, tell people about you, smile when they see you, pay, understand the value, and happily pay. B clients just haven't become A clients yet, but they have potential. And C clients are complainers and suck the life out of you and your company every single day.
And so, I think people sometimes get it on the hiring side. I wouldn't just hire anybody.
Yeah.
And when they sell, they'll sell to anybody.
Yeah. Oh, so you have a heartbeat and some money? Let's do this.
Oh, yeah. Or, you need a furnace. I sell furnaces. Guess what? Apparently we're a perfect match.
Yeah.
The answer is we're not a perfect match.
That's cool. And really understanding who your core customer is super important. And I mean, obviously I could do this. I mean, hopefully we can do this again because I'd love to have you back on the show. We're done just in terms of time right now. And I'm just like, I'm getting like watched right now. I think I have to actually get off this thing, but just to wrap up, I mean, there was a couple of things there that really stuck out from my end. And I hope the, listeners and watchers of this, kind of get some of the same takeaways, or if not more, but the idea of changing culture of talking to people and getting them involved, I think is just such an important piece. Even if it's not done in a boardroom, it's done with everybody and all the stakeholders, whether it's customers, staff, suppliers, understanding how they perceive the reality of what your company is, I think is a really cool takeaway. The idea of entrepreneurs, as an entrepreneur, my customers are my team. I think a lot of people forget that. And then when, doing all the interviews, let me tell you, why we stink or some of the warts that we're working on. I just think that's awesome. And the idea of spending the time, finding the time to take the time to interview everybody that's coming in, because the cost of getting it wrong is so high. I just think a lot of people look at it that way. So I really appreciate you sharing all this stuff today. Michael, it was great.
Yeah, no, my pleasure. As to end with, from my grandfather. I'm sure he stole it from somebody, but he always says, if you don't have time to do it right the first time, when do you have time the second time? So
get it right. Cool. Thanks a lot for doing this.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Really appreciate being on the show today, man.
Thanks for having me.